Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 34 of the British Boxing Blog podcast. Obviously, doing it remotely, given the circumstances. Bit of a lockdown special going on here. Strange circumstances to be doing a podcast in, but good to speak to you nonetheless.
Hi, it's the first time I've actually spoken to you in a while, like outside of WhatsApp, I think. But I would be in trouble if we were recording this one in person, I think.
Exactly. Strange time, isn't it?
Again, we'll do a boxing podcast when there's been absolutely no boxing on for the last however long.
Obviously, we're doing this on Sunday, the 5th of April, which, should have been the day after Ritson Vasquez at Newcastle Arena. So, ideally we would have had a lot to talk about today and, reflecting on a good night's boxing, but not the case.
Well, it would have been sort of the period of all the pay-per-views and that, wasn't it? Like, there was all the cards where everyone was debating, like Matchroom putting on loads of pay-per-views, is that worth the money? Like, which ones are you going to pay for? You're going to pay for all of them. And now you're like, well, actually, I wouldn't mind. I'd better happily pay 20 quid for Chisora headline in the pay-per-view.
Exactly. It was starting to come to the busy period, wasn't it? Obviously, you had Dubois, Joyce and stuff, and all the May Matchroom stuff leading up to Joshua, really. But I guess they've all gone by the wayside now. I know Joshua got called off the other day. I haven't seen, and then some of the May dates have been pushed back. But again, at this stage, I kind of see much going ahead. To be honest, can you even see anything happening?
No, I was going to ask you, like, maybe have a little bit of a speculation about when things are going to get back up and running. But I think the truth is, no one outside of the government, and even there, like, has any idea really. Obviously, it's affected everyone in every walk of life, not just sort of live sport. And like, it is a bit. There's people a lot worse off than just us not being able to watch a bit of sport. But it is a bit of a. It's inconvenient anyway, isn't it? But like I was saying, I can't remember who I've spoken to about now. Everyone and anyone, I think. But we're still like on a rota at work, so I'm in one day every 2 weeks at the minute, and then working from home the rest of the time. But we were saying, like, they're going to try and, I think, keep us in lockdown for as long as possible, because the last thing they want to do is sort of, and I suppose this applies to boxing as well, is be like, right, well, we'll try and get up and running, try and get back to normal, and then 2 months down the line have to go into lockdown again and start everything all over again to try and fight it. So I can't see anything sports-wise happening until like very end of this year. Like, it's going to be,
especially like with mass gatherings, like you say, of 10 or more thousand people and what have you. That would have been, say, at the arena last night, and I know that Ritson date has been put back to the end of June 27th. But speaking to his manager the other day on Twitter, he was just at this stage he didn't sound hopeful at all. On a
that's what I mean, you're not though, because people are saying dates for certain things, but like based on what?
That's it. I know. It's
absolutely nothing to say that we're going to be any different come June. Like, we could be,
no, that's it. I know.
Could be all done and dusted, but I think it's just that large unknown that is thrown everyone. Like we were saying, obviously, like my wife and I as teachers, we were like, well, we've been off for 6 weeks at a time before, but that's in place, and you know what's coming in the future, and when we'll be starting work again and all the rest of it. Whereas now it's because no one knows.
That's it. It could be.
You could be
unprecedented. Yeah.
It's just there's no end in sight at the minute, which is a weird place to be in terms of society, I think.
That's it. And you look and you could be thinking, you see things like Glastonbury's had the bullet and stuff like that it's, because of the manpower that it takes to sort of construct a site like Glastonbury and stuff like that. And obviously that's the reason Joshua sort of got called off, because of everything that goes around the event and, that mass sort of migration of people in London. And it's so uncertain, like you're saying. You just think like the Euros is obviously gone and rightly so. And you could be looking towards the end of the year for some sort of normality. Who knows? Like, again, like you say, we're speculating, and like in more local terms, I see Summer Rumble's been cancelled. Sunderland Football Club have cancelled that. It's held at the Stadium of Light every year, and that's had the plug pulled on it. That was obviously the 10-year anniversary this year, and everyone was gearing up for a big local show. And I think a few people are gutted, but like you say, I guess it's like you said, it's a bigger picture, isn't it?
It is, and I think when you talk about that bigger picture, a lot of people, and this isn't just sports related, like a lot of people don't seem to grasp that until it affects something that is part of their life or it impacts them. It's almost a selfish mentality that we've got at the minute.
Yeah, 100%.
Is that as well? Like you hear stories of things happening abroad and in the other end of the world. You just sort of think, oh well, it's easy to put at the back of your mind. It's not impacting you directly, and then, as you say, like things like festivals, the big sporting events, all that. You think, oh God, it is serious. Like,
oh, that's it. Like it is. It's mad. Like, and it's been such a quick, really turnaround in looking back. And I know a few weeks ago when Cheltenham was on and that got by the skin of its teeth, and I was still having a few pints down Lowfell and still out in the town and stuff on that weekend. And just since then, it's like it's mad how quickly life's slowed down with these measures that have been put in place. And to be honest, it makes you think, and it makes you do appreciate the smaller things, and and just little things like keeping in touch with your mates, and it's brought people together, but not together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we're lucky that it's happened in this time where we've got a lot of technology and what have you to be able to stay in touch and speak to your friends and family regularly. Whereas obviously, if we didn't
like those,
I mean, don't get me wrong, like we speak pretty much daily anyway in various WhatsApp groups and that. But it's just been a bit more like focused on that, and then obviously, like I'm with a wife and the dog, and like we've been off together for long periods at a time, and when we're not driving each other mad, it's been nice. Like it's just
that's it. And obviously, I'm not like I'm away from my girlfriend at the minute, and I'm still trying to bloody buy a house in the middle of this, which does add a lot of uncertainty and stuff, but still working from home, which obviously working for medical companies expected. So this will be my third straight week, I think, working from home now, coming into it tomorrow, which gives a bit of structure to my days. Do you know what I mean? So it hasn't been that bad, and you do create times for things that maybe you neglect. You know what I mean? A bit, whether that's music or films or taking the dog out. Do you know what I mean? Like things like sort of ground you a bit. Do you know? And I know it can also send you insane at the same time. Like, and there has been long days, and so I'm grateful for doing this podcast today as well.
Like nice, just sort of going, like that sort of simplistic thing of it. Like as you said,
100% now.
Catching up on like a few box sets, a few films and what have you, and then walking the dog. Like it's just right. That's my life now. I don't have the bigger things to worry about anymore.
No, that's it. And like it's mad. Like, and maybe is it coming out the other end of it might make people realise a bit. You know what I mean? That is. Be grateful for some small things, but from a sporting point of view, I think it's mad. Like from a summer 2020 was gearing up to be an amazing summer of sport, and like obviously it has been it's been shelved really. Do you know what I mean?
From a selfish point of view, like we were flying, we were doing all right, like generating a bit of interaction. Obviously,
we were doing good.
Well, and that, and then it's just like boom, like hit. It's just everything's gone flat, and to be honest, I think we've been guilty as well. We haven't really been on Twitter and stuff. That's like various things like working from home, getting everything in life sorted out for what's going on at the minute. But
that's it, and
there's nothing actually going on. I know a lot of our sort of equivalents are out there, sort of putting like hypothetical historical matches and who like we've done it a bit, but it's not like what we're here for. I want to get in with a live boxing and cover the actual sport and what's happening, but there's not actually anything happening.
I guess we could have got people on the phone and did a couple of phone chats and that, which could be something to look into the longer.
We still could at this. We're going another 6 months or whatever.
Well, that's it. But that's it. We try to keep people up to date with like changing of dates and stuff like that. But that's where after this point, it's very strange. Like,
right.
Obviously.
Well, we have had a couple of questions, so we'll crack on with them.
Very nice that people want to listen to.
Some of them link in with obviously what we've been talking about. Kyle Middlemas has fired a couple over. First one, he said, how realistic could you see boxing behind closed doors? So obviously that was one of the potential options for some of these bigger shows.
It was.
Could that happen? And like my first instinct was like, definitely. I think a lot of the UK shows are dependent on a good gate. Like we've talked about ticket deals and so on for God knows how long. So I think whereas football is obviously getting a lot of money from TV rights and things, and they're not as reliant on people coming through the turnstiles as they once were. I do think boxing still relies on that to a degree.
I don't know. Like I was
But I think right now, if they could if there was a show on behind closed doors and it was on pay-per-view, they'd make an absolute fortune because of the desperate state everyone's in to watch some boxing, just to see some live sport.
And I think that was, before this lockdown got serious, before the lockdown came in force, and it was still, everything was a bit up in the air, and it was like, wash your hands, keep your distance, and hope for the best. I think that was definitely an angle that Matchroom were looking at now, that sort of behind closed doors, because I think that was the direction, as Lewis had written, had been told to prepare for. At one point was it's still on at this stage. It could be behind closed doors, but still on Sky. So I think that was definitely an angle that they looked into, which is obviously now been it's totally impossible now. We know that everything's been moved, but that was definitely an option. And at first I thought, I'm not sure about that. When he said that, and I thought, but I asked him, what do you think about that? He's like, I would just treat it as a really hard sparring session. Do you know what I mean? I would fight him.
That's the thing. We often hear, you hear both sides, but don't you? There's certain boxers, when they've been in a bit of bother, they've said the crowd's lifted them, and they've maybe raised the game because of having hundreds, thousands behind them or whatever, and it's given them that boost. Whereas other times you hear the example of they just zone it all out, and it's just them and another man in the ring boxing, as it would be, as you say, in a sparring session, training session, or like any other fight.
Well, I know that's it. If you were a fight,
a lot of people were coming down, same to you, saying, it's not the done thing, is it? We need that arena, it needs the fans, the atmosphere, it needs to be bouncing, all the rest of it. But Joshua Ruiz in Saudi Arabia looked flat as a pancake.
That's it. And if you were in a race fighter,
if you're not relying on filling an arena and getting ticket sales, if you're getting the money from elsewhere, then you'd host it in the middle of nowhere essentially behind closed doors. You could have had a dozen sheikhs at ringside and no one else there, and it wouldn't have made much of a difference.
I wonder if
it's just how they could logistically have done it with the necessary funding, I suppose, because you're not, unfortunately for Lewis, you're not going to get Saudi money coming in to put him in the Castle Arena behind closed doors.
He did hint at that, to be honest. He's like, what about me commission and me ticket sales and all that? But
no, that's it. As I say, we've talked about ticket deals and all the rest of it. So that, it's obviously, again, as you say, it's been taken out of the promoter's hands now, but it's all these sort of potential hurdles that in the end they couldn't get over because obviously they didn't do it. But these are all sorts of things. It's right, well, fair enough. It's all very well saying, right, well, it's safer without the crowd there, but how could you then fund it? How could you
finance it?
All the boxers on the card, all the ones who are almost exclusively on a ticket deal.
No, you made a good point before that. Obviously, if that was to happen, then I think the viewing figures would be through the roof, just because people are starved of live sport. And if it did happen, and I know boxing in this country, especially probably stemming from Matchroom, does sort of rely on that atmosphere, that full night out package, and even the small hole shows try and generate an atmosphere and stuff like that. So you would miss that aspect. But it makes me wonder that, is this if this lockdown is lifted, and if some parts of it are anyway, but who's to say that these mass gatherings will be lifted? Do you know what I mean? It might be relaxed, but it might not be completely back to normal at whatever point in the summer. Then it could be an option that people look into. And I think, you've seen the virtual Grand National yesterday, and that sort of that interest that got, and and is there a market out there to do some sort of boxing pay-per-view, but with no crowd there, and a certain amount of profits go to the NHS and different things like that? You know what I mean? And I think people would probably get amongst it, like they did. You seen with that computerized horse race yesterday?
Well, I said this to Jess, my wife, the other week when it was the virtual Formula One, and it was basically the Formula One PlayStation game, but a sort of better version of it.
Yeah.
We were all playing that, and it was on Sky Sports. And I said, going down the sci-fi route, I was like, eventually they'll do away with live sport. This will be the future, in 100 years' time or whatever. Because there's none of the risk, and even now, the people who play FIFA and play the sports online and that, they get paid massive amounts of money. Obviously, I can't remember who it was or what it was, but there was some online tournament where there's a gamer making millions of dollars for winning it, and you think, well, they're almost like professional at what they're doing, like in terms of doing it through a simulator. So like you had a few of the actual F1 drivers and that doing it, and you're like, they're doing it without any of the risk and the sort of damage and that. And it was like, the way health and safety's going, eventually, like, surprises if in 100,000 years time or whatever, it's all, I sound like an old man, it'll say, oh, it'll all be virtual, it'll be not like, all be virtual reality and that. And it's just like, it's interesting, as you sort of said before, about people in general, but will it maybe shift some of the sort of paradigms of what live sport is and how it's broadcast and all the rest of it? Like,
maybe.
Like, I know, like, you know, as you say, right, everyone can go back to work, whatever, but actually, people like gatherings of over 2,000 people or 1,000 people, no, they're still not safe. We're not going to do those. Yeah. You can guarantee that the boxing promoters, the whatever other sport it'll be, they'll be thinking, right, well, can we do this? And it'll put a big sort of emphasis on how important are those live crowds. Everyone says it and everyone builds it up and bigs it up, but that's because at the end of the day, they're all paying customers. Like, we've said this regarding Newcastle for a while, like just what percentage of Mike Ashley's income comes from that match day revenue. Like, it's massively important for him to have the full house, and you can debate it left and right and go off.
Well, you can, like,
go off on a whole different tangent for that one, but it just shows that if they're not making money or they haven't, like, we're using Matchroom as an example because they had a lot of shows coming up in this sort of period, so they'll have projected to make X amount of money from each of those shows and over the course of the year, which they just won't have done. So, as you say, will their hand be forced a bit? Will they be thinking, well, actually, we can't, you know what I mean? We can put something together with some sort of product that we can charge for and make a bit of money back. Will they go down that route?
Possibly, like, it is something that might lead, you know, like, possibly, like, later in the summer, and who knows, it could be an option. And like you say, it's going to test businesses. Like, you see football clubs like furloughing their stuff now, and Tottenham came out the other day and just said, like, the lack of match day revenue and stuff, like, it just brought everything to a standstill. And like, it's mental. But I see Sauerland had done some sort of fantasy boxing tournament, and they're computer simulated with all, like, you know, Muhammad Ali and Lennox Lewis and all that.
That was, it's funny because there's been a fair bit of debate recently about, like, hasn't been a boxing game in years and what have you. And that, I'm sure that was based on a PlayStation 3 game.
Fight Night or something.
Just fired up the PS3 and thought, right, well, we'll put both computer players and let them crack on. But it does just go to show, like, how sort of dependent sports fans are and just, like, what they've been missing out on and looking for that fix almost. Like, it's often described as a drug, innit? Because, like, you can't give it up necessarily. The amount of times we've come on here and slagged off various bits of boxing and things you're not happy with, you still come back.
But like you said, it's like you don't know what you've got till it's gone. Do you know what I mean? And you mentioned before that, like, in people could flood back to matches and back to boxing when they get the chance because, like, they bloody missed it. Do you know what I mean? And, like, so there's that side of it as well, that people will be, like, absolutely gagging to get out and get to the boxing and what have you. And so if they're allowed and stuff, and get back to the matches and see their mates and have a pint whenever that may be. I'm sure the bars will probably be the last things to reopen. Like, but it wouldn't surprise me that if there's a way around it and these laws get relaxed regarding the lockdown, then it wouldn't surprise me if the behind closed doors things definitely looked at again later on this summer.
I think one of the potential issues of that, though, is the boxers themselves. Like, it's all very well ticking over and doing your little exercises and your individual workouts and what have you. I've seen a few boxers in their house or wherever it is in a closed gym doing the bags and.
But that's not the same as a 12-week training camp, is it?
Exactly, and they're not going to be sparring and what have you. They're not going to have that same intensity. So, like, it's like, how many times do we hear boxers just sort of ticking over because they haven't got a fight date lined up? You've now got every boxer in the country in that position. So then, say they get the go ahead and they're like, right, we're going to put a show on. Does that first show come 12 weeks after they've got the go?
That's good. That's a great point. Again. It's a good point, you know.
Or the boxers think, well, everyone's in the same position, so, like, sod it. I'll go. He's not done the same training, so I'll go in. And it's an interesting one. Like, it could be another delay in terms of when everyone's going to actually be ready again.
That's a good point, and would you?
Which is why I think, like, end of the year or even early next year, by the time the big shows are going to come round again,
would you as a boxer be willing to put yourself on the line just to get that? Would you be like, oh, go on, then I'll take it, but I can't really see me training much, and I can't get the gym, but
I don't think any of
you know what I mean? Like
the top, what you class as the elite boxers will. Like they're back for fighting twice a year anyway. Like they want the everything has to be right. You know what I mean? All the demands have to be met and all the rest of it. Whereas I think some of the ones sort of the more domestic level, a couple of losses on the record already, might think actually, sorry, this is a big opportunity.
Well, that's true. There is that way of looking at it. Like,
it's going to depend on the individuals, isn't it? But that's what I mean. Like you're looking at Joshua or whatever, and like obviously Fury Wilder was another one that was meant to be in the pipeline. Like all these ones, they're going to want as close to perfection in terms of their build up and their preparation, aren't they?
You don't. That's a good point. Like you're talking the expensive training camps, flying in sparring partners. Do you know what I mean? And stuff like that. Like you don't even think about like that you just can't do. Do you know what I mean? That you're not be able to do, and it's like there's especially for them elite fighters, like you say, there's a whole sort of network and team and around it that if things aren't perfect, elite fighters are perfectionists. Do you know what I mean? They're not just going to go in there like, go on, then I've done 8 weeks taking over. Like it's just not the same, is it? And there's all that around boxing as well, and it's like, but then there's the moral responsibility of getting it signed off medically. Like, are you allowed to put people in the ring that aren't 100% and haven't really, like just to keep people happy and fill a date and what have you?
Well, like, this is the thing. How many boxers, when they have it, like I know it's different because if it's an injury or something or whatever the circumstances may be, if they have a long layoff, they generally don't come back into a big fight, do they? They come back and have a little tick over and like
but then there's a
few rounds in and stuff. And it wouldn't surprise me from that point of view if a lot of these cards, like say obviously Dubois, Joyce was an example where there was a real 50-50 there. If they both come back and have a tune-up before then fighting each other.
Well, that's it. Their date did get moved enough. Is it October or is it July? I can't remember. I've wrote it down somewhere. But again, these dates
they just moved to July originally, I think, and then obviously it's been
July. That's it.
But as I said right at the start, it's just guesswork, putting it back to that.
It is guesswork.
More hopeful than anything else.
The promoters obviously have to get in touch with the venues and say, what have you got? Okay, we'll provisionally take that date. Do you know what I mean? And that's all
the venues aren't going to have much booked up at the minute.
No, well, that's true. It's like a date saving exercise at this minute. Do you know what I mean? It's a contingency plan, and that's all it is, really. Like, I know I've had a couple of concerts and gigs and that cancelled, and like, which were meant to be this May, but now they've been moved to next March. And if sporting events take the same, like, you know what I mean, same sort of guidelines, you're just putting everything back a year basically. And I know the Premier League are adamant they're going to finish, but sometimes you think, are they living sort of pie in the sky? Do you know what I mean? Are they living?
Well, that's the thing. Like,
are they living in the real world?
The audience point of view, the Premier League probably could get away with it because of the TV deals, and again, how many people are tuning in to watch the matches and what have you. So I've said for ages, like they could play behind closed doors, like apart from a full stadium looking pretty and having an atmosphere to show on the telly. There's not compared to what they get paid from like Sky and BT and all the foreign networks and stuff. Actual daily sort of match day revenue isn't a massive percentage of it. So,
but then the point you've just made there about boxing, though, about like needing a full training camp, like footballers and people might argue that they need some sort of mini type of pre-season. Do you know what I mean?
They will by now, because you think how long they've had off. And again, like you see them all on the treadmills in the gyms and in the home gyms and what have you, but they're not having that same intensity, that same sharpness. And then you've also got to look at like the players themselves, like being in contact. There's still 22 people.
Well, that's 22 minimum. It's full training grounds. Probably got over about 100 people there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, like on about a match though, like as well. Like,
oh yeah, of course.
You've got then two teams coming together, all going back to their respective families and stuff. You don't know who's had it, who's transmitting it, whatever.
Plus managers, coaches.
Yeah, the
first aid stuff.
Team, isn't it? The whole club, like the whole match day group.
And then there's the whole thing about, you're going to need an ambulance there, like you do every football match up and down the country. So, you know what I mean? There's that side of it. There's when the NHS is stretched and paramedics are stretched and blah blah blah. There's an absolute load of different contingencies and different like variables that like it just makes you think, is this achievable at all? You know what I mean? Like, just mad. Like, then to even get, I don't know why I'm talking football here, but like to get like footballers.
No, but it all links together because the same sort of thing. Like we're talking
Sport,
about
innit?
as well. Like it's the similarities there. And one of the next questions actually, Colin mentions about the sort of an issue like something that's going on with football and would it work in boxing. So I'll let you crack on and then I'll ask you that one when you're done.
What was I saying there? No, just like there's that whole side of it where like they obviously have like footballers will have to go back to training at some point, and like you say, like you've got your first team squad plus coaches plus medical staff plus analysts, and you're like, at what point are you? You're talking hundreds of people who are probably employed at a Premier League training ground. Like easy, probably say 100. I don't know, maybe less. Chefs and blah blah blah. Whatever.
Oh yeah, of course.
A lot, like at what point is that allowed? Because then they're mingling with their families after training and friends, and I don't know. It's just a total minefield, and obviously these discussions will go on with regards to football, boxing, the lot. But it is strange times, and obviously this takes greater minds than mine and yours to see a way out. But like for now, you just have to take it day by day, don't you? And just wait until you hear any official announcement, really.
Yeah, exactly. So Colin's second question says, do you think boxers will be given a fund like the EFL and non-league football has been given by the Premier League? Obviously, one of the issues at the minute, and I think footballers do get picked on and victimised a bit with this, but they're saying like obviously those in a position of wealth, should they not be given a certain amount to the NHS, to the people that need it? And it's always a debate. Like you can argue that in sort of, I want to say like normal everyday life as well. But my answer to that is I don't know who it would be that's tasked with giving the money to like boxers. Like whose responsibility? There's no union or
no, that's it. We've
look after boxers.
Yeah, we've talked about that before, I think, and that there isn't like people are saying, oh, what was it that people always used to say? Oh, like who would fund the drug tests and all this, and who would blah blah blah, and we were like, well, there's no boxing union. Do you know what I mean? People can't afford to do it, and
it should be the board for
it should
in terms of like if boxers are paying their fees to the board to be licensed.
Yeah,
I know it goes towards the board's running costs, but then they should be giving something back to boxers. But then the problem is there's such a vast array of boxers. It's not like
no, that's not. No, there's
professional boxers. For those that aren't aware, there's probably the majority of professional boxers work another job outside of boxing.
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
They're not using boxing as their sole income. They're probably not making enough out of it, anywhere near enough out of it anyway. So like,
no.
It's like I don't know what would qualify any given boxer to receive.
You're totally right. Where would it come from?
Some like pension pot or whatever it might be.
Yeah, that's the thing with boxing. There is no union. There's no like, if you God forbid, suffered a bad injury in a fight or you retire, then that's you done the next day. Do you know what I mean? Like there's no help after boxing and stuff like that, and there's no like like you've got PFA in football and that. And as far as I'm aware, there's nothing like that. Do you know what I mean? There's like maybe if you're with a big promoter, you might get a bit more help. I don't, you know what I mean? Or well looked after.
Even outside the individuals and the individual clubs in terms of football, like the Premier League as an organisation is earning like obscene amounts of money, so can afford to send a little bit further down, and you could make the argument that it should be doing that more regularly and and with more money. But in boxing, it's like, well, who do we look at? Do we look at the individuals, like likes of Joshua, Tyson Fury, the ones that are making the mega bucks? Is it then their responsibility to donate money to like less?
But then they could turn around and say, well, why should it be? Like,
exactly. That's what I mean. It's like, why should they be doing that? Why should their money go to? Like, I'm not. There's obviously a lot of debate around whether Fury did give any money to charity and stuff, but like, up to them as an individual, like,
if there was a pot and all that, but then
their money to, like, you could argue then, well, should it go to a boxer who's struggling, or should it go to the NHS staff, or should it go to a certain charity? Like, again, it's that individual preference, and like.
But then, how many boxers? If there was an option to pay into some sort of pot or union or whatever, then if that came off your fight fees, then that's another expense for a boxer. Do you know what I mean? Like, even
And this is it, and it's like,
even if it's 20
we're
quid
looking at
going in,
the examples there, the ones who can probably afford to do it. Like, if Joshua was to lose 5% of his purse or whatever, it probably wouldn't affect him a lot, and then that money could be almost life-changing for someone further down the chain. But as you say, when you've got boxers struggling to break even fight by fight, can they afford to lose 5% of their wage or whatever, like their purse? Probably not.
There's loads of different things in there. Like, it sounds like an absolute logistical nightmare and bureaucratic nightmare, if you ask me.
Because there's no one body in charge either. It's
and who is still like classed as a professional boxer? Like, if you haven't fought for a year and you've got no intention of fighting, or 8 months or 9 months and you've got no fight date, and you're 1-0 from Stoke, and your last fight was, I don't know, last September, and you won 40-36 against someone, and then you've got nothing coming up, and you thought, I'm not really asked, like, but you're still classed as a professional. You've still got a license. Are you sort of trying to get in this pot and be like, oh, I'm struggling, I'm a boxer? Like, do you know what I mean? And like, there's that many professional boxers in this country. Like, who's to decide how much you get? Like, if you've fought 3 times, you're from Cambridge, and you know what I mean? You've fought on 3 small hall shows, and like, how much are you getting? Are you put like compared to someone who's 10-0 who's signed a match? I don't know. There's that many variables, and there's that many professional fighters. It's mental. Like, I'm sure there's over 100 in like northeastern Cumbria and stuff alone. Like, I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know. It's mint in on paper it is to trickle it all down and have this sort of professional boxers union and that. I don't know how you would manage it and fund it, and just mental. Like, I just think you would like to think that boxers would be looked after and they deserve to be looked after, but at the same time, I don't know how you manage that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. It comes back down to, I think we've talked about it before, with like just how hard it is for a boxer to survive and to make it as a pro, and to get to that point where they're earning enough money to retire in sort of an ideal situation anyway. But the whole nature of it as a business, like, you need to make the money to take the money out.
Yeah.
Like, unless you've got a sort of I don't know how to describe, like an infinite pot of money. So, you know what I mean? Someone just pouring money in. It's like, where does this all come from? Like, you've got to generate the money. Like, we'll talk about like a ticket deal, how unfair it is on a boxer. You could be as talented as you like, but unless you're shipping tickets, you're not necessarily going to make enough money out of the business.
And you know where
you're really talented at and really good at and good enough to do for a living, you're not going to be able to do that. And again, it's not particularly fair, but the money has to come from somewhere. You have to generate. It's like, you're not just going to get paid because you're good. You're going to get paid because there is money there to pay you.
That's it. And I guess, we're just talking about professional boxing here, and then what about these amateur clubs that fight for existence every year and have to do home shows and fundraisers, and you rely on sponsors and donations, and they might say, well, where's our help? Do you know what I mean? Like, but then there's a whole side of things, like, what about trainers and coaches whose gyms are now lying empty and who still have to pay rates and rents and like different things? There's just mental. Like, where would it stop? Where would the requests for funding stop? Do you know what I mean? I guess from a boxer point of view, I think you have to hope that you sign to one of the big lot or MTK, or you've got good sponsors who will stand by you, during the times that you're not really fighting, you know what I mean? And who can continue to help you, like, take over and, like, to still live that life as a professional boxer. But I guess that depends on your sponsors and your attitude and how well your sponsors have looked after you and what you do for them. And, it's complicated, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And you want people to sort of back you during these, like, fallow times that think actually will stand by him or her. And then hopefully it comes good again later in the year. Do you know what I mean? But it's mental, like, and just to sum up, like, it would be mint if there was some sort of fund that would help with loads of stuff, like, a union and life after boxing and boxers slipping into mental health problems and all that. But at this point, it just seems like a nightmare unless anyone's got a better idea than us do.
No, but I think this is the issue, like just as you say, with boxing in general, rather than like you add in the turmoil of what's going on now. Like we again talk multiple times about how often boxing seems to shoot itself in the foot, and I think part of that is because it's every man for himself, and
That's I was just about to say that. Yeah, you're right.
like and again it sort of has to be because there's the board, but you can argue just how like, influential the board actually are. Like, yes, they give the license and stuff, but they're relying on money spinning shows to get a bigger cut to keep themselves running. And like, I've got no idea that the finances involved in that and how much it costs for the board to run and operate. But like what their running costs actually are, because like, they've got to send out their officials and all the rest of it, and like, how much gets covered from them. It's as I say, it's a complete unknown in terms of the actual intricacy of the finance. But within that, you've then got every sort of region has its set amount of promoters or whatever trying to put on their shows, competing against each other. You've got the trainers doing the same. Like, there's no one.
Yeah,
Again,
exactly.
there might be people making money out of boxing, but there's a very small percentage. Like the majority of the people we speak to say that they're putting they end up putting their own money in to run a gym or to put on a show or to fight on a show or whatever. And you think outside of relying on the generosity of sponsors, there doesn't seem to be a set business model that works other than being that one in 100 boxers that gets himself to world title level, that's marketable, that again gets like that sponsorship deal that brings in like the pay-per-view money that makes that sort of money that they can live comfortably off. And it's
And you mentioned
you
sponsors
hit the
there,
nail
though.
on the head when you said like it'll take greater minds than us to solve it and to work it out.
But sponsors, a lot of sponsors are like manual businesses and stuff, like tradesmen and stuff like that, who they could be struggling at this time. Do you know what I mean? Like their businesses are going through tough times, and they're not working, and they're working from home and not working at all, and can't get out and do the jobs, relying on government grants and all that. So the whole thing's fucked, basically. I don't know. It's just mental.
Because like again, like the other side of it is often the argument of boxing because of how fragmented it is, and we're saying there like every man for himself, and there's almost that selfishness to it. The UFC keeps getting thrown up and saying, well, they've got all the best fighters under one umbrella, so they can make the competitive fights. They can, like, the fighters know that they've got to work and step up and like contracts and all the rest of it. But then, like, until very recently, and there's only a couple of examples, the UFC pays a fraction of what the top boxers get paid. So like you can be top 10 in the world and still not really be earning much more than sort of we do every year, like depending on how many fights you've got and all the rest of it. And it's like it's that sort of there has to be a balance, I think, of having somebody in charge, but then that one, like I said earlier, that one person in charge has got to have enough money to pay everyone fairly and to keep them happy.
It is a tricky one. It's really tricky. It is like you could go on all day about it, couldn't you? But it's sadly like I think Colin's Hart's in the right place, and as is everyone else's. But it's just hard to like. It's just too many variables, too much to sort, too much.
I think right now as well, there's too much for everyone, as you say. It's like it's not just boxers, is it? It's like anyone self-employed is going to be struggling at the moment.
That's it. You're totally right. Like obviously.
Is it the government's responsibility? Do they put something up like as you said? Then do you say, "Well, I'm a pro boxer. I've got a professional boxing license. I want 80% of my fight purse."
That's it. And like, are you sort of classed as that self-employed people that are looking for things? And I've seen like musicians looking for grants and help the other day because they're like they're classed as self-employed and they're off the road at the minute and they can't do gigs and they can't do whatever. Like,
there's one of the women I work with. Her lad, her son's a singer. And he's just had his album put into HMV.
Right.
Like on the shelves and that, but then he said no one's going to be going out to buy it.
Oh, Jesus, that's it. It's a good point.
Like he's got a day job that he can't do. So he's getting 80% of his salary for that. But then he was saying like if he's doing a gig every weekend somewhere, that's like
there's a load of sides you don't think of, isn't
his salary.
That It's a shame. There's a lot of uncertainty at the minute there around. But do we get any other questions, or is
We've got a couple through on Facebook. Jamesy Walker, top fan, it says here.
Did you see the other one on Facebook?
I'm reading it out in a minute, aren't
I? Right, okay.
So we'll get back to a bit of boxing first, though, away from all this morbidity and depression. Jamesy Walker says top 3 British fights, top 3 British boxers, top 3 trainers. So we'll break that down. I think if we get 3 between, we'll be doing well.
We'll do 3 between us.
So top 3 British fights. Should we say fights involving both British boxers?
I would say all British. Let's go all British.
Go on. There's a couple stick in my mind straight away.
Right, I'll start. I've got one that came into my head, and I often mention this one, right? And for me, right, our era, was Froch Groves 1.
That's the first one I was going to say, so I'm glad you went that one.
I just loved it. I don't know, it just reminds us of a good time in life where, was just watching more boxing. Was watching more boxing than ever, like, just all the mates getting into it, and, like, some of the mates bought, like, George Groves t-shirts and that, and, like, we're just, just watching it with them, and, like, it's one of them moments where I'll always remember where I was when Groves put Froch down, and that reaction. I was in Ricky's house, our mutual friend, and like with a few of the other lads, just having a few drinks and that, and just that reaction when he put him down was like one of them just sporting moments. And I don't know, it just reminds us of a good time watching a lot of boxing, and everything about that, the build up, the contrast between the two fighters. Groves was sort of probably at the peak of his powers. I know he never won the fight or either of the fights, but like, it's just the contentious stoppage, even now you look back and you think that was still sort of one of their moments now where it still can get you wound up and stuff like that. And it was just mad. It was just a good time, and I just enjoyed everything about that whole. That I always say that was a bit like that was peak Matchroom for me. That just they got everything right then. The build up, that the ringside show before it, and it was just great. It just caught everyone's imagination as it got, and it just. Never disappointed at all.
It's a bizarre one in a way, because it was essentially you had like Froch as the sort of long-standing-ish experienced champion, like he was the man, and it was his mandatory defense, wasn't it? I think it was the IBF. Like Groves had got his way into that position. It wasn't like a fight that anyone really wanted to see or was clamoring for, and it was almost seen as. Like not a routine defense, but a defense that Froch was expected to win. He was just like better, as I say, more experienced, too tough, maybe just had too much for Groves. Had it come too soon for Groves, and the longer it went on, he just sort of talked his way into it and built up a bit of a like almost villain. I was going to say like a following, but almost the opposite. And he was get under Froch's skin a bit, and that seemed to get under the fans' skin a little bit as well, and like you obviously.
But he was booed into the ring, wasn't he?
Exactly. I think that gets glossed over a little bit now because of how the narrative for the rematch and everything went, and like obviously what's happened since. But like I agree with you when you said like peak Matchroom. It maybe wasn't necessarily the peak then, but it was the start of the wave that like they went into. Obviously Froch Grove 2. The rematch was perfect, like the perfect storm, wasn't it? Because of the ending, because the Groves had dropped him. There was enough about it. There was like that genuine animosity between the two. There was enough there. Everything was just mixing up nicely, and
like a perfect storm.
Basically. Yeah, exactly. And then obviously the fact that it was Wembley, wasn't it? And it was like, stadium fights have happened before, and I think you could probably put some of those earlier ones in there with like in terms like you go back to like Ben and Eubank, maybe answering like a couple of the other fights. They could definitely be in the discussion, but from that more recent point of view, it recaptured the public imagination. Like I know people who went from like up here down to London don't particularly care about boxing, but wanted to be there for Froch Groves too. Like boxing's at the new Wembley, it's going to be massive, and
absolutely.
Saying it, everyone wanted to be a part of it.
I just wanted to sort of give one from like our era, and that is proper our era. Do you know what I mean? That was obviously pre-BBB, I believe, but then like it was just I don't know, it was like you could talk Ben and Eubank and stuff like that, but it was sort of a bit before our time and that, and but that one was just like I said, it was just I just watching it with my mates and just getting really sort of buzzing for it, and having a good day watching it, and like just everything about it, I just loved. And like, as I say, one of their moments, I'll always remember that reaction of when Fotch at the deck, and like, it was class, and it's what like sport should be about. You know what I mean? Watching it with your mates and having that sort of banter and that, and it was just a good time. And that one, it caught everyone's imagination, like you said, and they got a lot of things right there, Matchroom, which I guess they've used later going forward. You know what I mean? It was a big deal. You know, the amount of stadium fights they've had since then is nobody's business really. So it's obviously, it gave them the platform to grow as well, didn't it? So it was like, in hindsight, I think that was they got everything it was just a perfect mix of everything, like sort of build up. You had the villain, the good guy, but then the tables turned and Groves' little mind games, and it was great. And then they've sort of both came out of it well. Do you know what I mean? Fotch, and then even Fotch after the second one, people hated him for a bit. Even that post-fight interview and that, he was an absolute cringe. But now he's sort of turned into a bit of a parody of himself, and he's funny, and he always mentions that 80,000 at Wembley, and it did. In the end, them two fights did neither man any harm, really, did they? Especially not Fotch. But you know what I mean? Like, they both came out of it. Well, really.
No, I agree, and like, I don't think, I don't think it did either of them any harm. Like, it sort of, obviously, getting knocked out wasn't great for Groves, and I think it took him a while to get over that. If we've got like going into the rematch of it, which again, like, it was a fight, you could arguably put that in as like another one in terms of and stuff and everything like of it. I think Groves took a bit more time to come back, and like it, as I say, it took him a while to get over that. He had a couple more sort of ropey performances before he settled with Shane McGuigan and got back.
Like, and he won his world title in the end, didn't he?
Yeah, it got back to that, like that level, that point. He probably thought he belonged at, but like from Fotch as well. Like, obviously, there was a lot of talk afterwards, wasn't there? He was like wanting Golovkin, or like, was the Andre Ward rematch going to happen? Like, maybe not, but it wasn't like he'd fought that and then that was it and he was done. And it for a while it was like he wanted to fight on. He wanted that, what he thought was going to be that career-defining performance, that big name. But then,
in a way, I guess
he's gone out. Like that, the punch was like the perfect way to bow out for him. And
it was, and he hasn't came back. He
obviously,
I admire him for that as well, because he hasn't came back. He obviously keeps himself in hellish shape. Do you know what I mean? But then he's retired, like that old cliche, innit? Retired with his marbles and his money in the bank. Do you know what I mean? So, he was and that was he was on a remarkable run. And Fotch, really, when you think about it as well, obviously he'd had like Kessler fights and Butte and all that, and it was like, you know, when you look back at Fotch's career, he did all right for himself, didn't he? Like, he squeezed every sort of drop out of what he had. You know, he's tough as old boots as well, and he was a good fighter, Fotch. And like, I think it's only as the years go by you realise probably how good he was.
Right, I agree. So we're counting.
Well, then I'll let you go.
See, I'm struggling now. I'm not going to lie, because I'm trying to think of, like, I mentioned like Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank and that. And I think, like, having watched the footage back, because I'm not going to lie and say like I sat and watched those live at the time. There were boxers that I was aware of as a kid, but never really. I wasn't into the sport as much as I know I am now. But even like as a casual, I wouldn't have said I was then. Like, my dad never sort of. He'd sit and watch occasionally, but he wasn't like one to like, oh, it's the box, like it's a big fight, we'll sit type thing. So like, I'd feel a bit of a fraud just chucking them in just because like they probably are. Like, I think from what
absolutely,
more recent, and it's like, right, well, like which ones were those sorts of like the entertaining fights? And like, I'm thinking of the big name boxers and like Joe Calzaghe, for example, like Ricky Hatton, but none of them had that really like defining all British fight.
No, Hatton fought McGee, didn't he? But that's like, do you know what I mean?
Like, I'm not saying that they didn't. Obviously, they had domestic clashes and stuff, but what they're known for are the ones where they've gone off stateside, and like it's the same with obviously Amir Khan, like the Kell Brook one. If that had happened, you could arguably say that. But when I said earlier, there was a few that were popping into my head. There's a couple of others, and the fights themselves weren't actually that good. But in terms of the rivalry and the fact that they got it on when they did, they're the ones that come to mind.
I know what you're going to say.
You know, go on then.
You're going to say Frampton Quigg, aren't you?
That's one that immediately leapt to mind, because I think, again, in terms of the matchmaking, it was perfect. They were both at like the peak.
Yeah.
It was one that had been mooted for a long time. Like, they were British and Commonwealth champions. Quigg was British, Frampton Commonwealth. They'd both gone through that sort of European level. Frampton obviously picked up the European belt, and then they were both technically world champions, using air quotes there for Quigg's regular WBA one, and got promoted outside the ring to the full belt or whatever. But in terms of an atmosphere and like that whole, just what you were saying, the perfect sort of nature of the build up, the hype and everything going into it, it was absolutely class. And then, like, as a Frampton fan, I can see why the fight would have been boring to the neutral, but as a Frampton fan, it was like, well, there's another round in the bank, there's another one in the bank, and by the half, like, you can't lose this. By a few goes the distance, you can't lose. Yeah, like,
you're totally right. There's three basically that I think we've been at together, and that is, well, I think you were all three. Frampton, Quigg, you definitely were. Bellew, Cleverly too. Were you at Liverpool then?
Yeah.
Which was rubbish. And then obviously Richard Davis last year, which turned into a really cracking 12 rounds. So them like Bellew, Cleverly too. I don't know. Like, let's rule that out straight out. It wasn't even a good night out. Do you know?
Everyone was depressed by the end of the show, wasn't they?
That one can go. I'm glad.
See, one of the ones I thought of was Bellew Cleverly won. Like, not as a massive event or anything. It wasn't like well heralded, but it was a good competitive fight, that one. They both stood and had a go at each other, and again, it's for the world title.
If you throw that one in there, then I guess you'd probably have to throw Groves to Gale in as well. Do you know what I mean?
That was
sort of similar.
That was the other one that was in the back of my mind, because again, like, I'm not one now. I'm a bit cynical and like I feel a bit jaded with it all, but that was for me like when like ringside and all that was peak level, because it was two boxers that absolutely despised each other, and you could see it was genuine. It wasn't like manufactured.
You're totally right, and it was British title, and they got it on. They had that animosity, and they had that sort of, you know, they were former teammates, amateur teammates, and then fell out. And, you know, it's British title, and I'm sure it was on Box Office as well. And you think
it was, because it was Cleverly's world title defense or something was meant to be on, and it got pulled, or that was meant to be the main event, and then like Groves to Gale obviously went ahead as the main event on Box Office, but I don't think it's particularly one that sold well, because again, it's sort of two relatively unknowns. But for a boxing fan, that was the time where I was like starting to sort of right, I want to watch as much boxing as possible here, like whatever level, you know what I mean? It was a competitive fight, and I think, especially from the De Gale point of view, because of how much animosity there was there and how much they had to lose, it didn't translate into a particularly exciting fight. It was very, very cagey and cautious, and it's not going to go down on anyone's sort of list of classics. However, it is one I've sat and actually watched a few times.
No, that's it. And I think, obviously, like, you're always going to get people reminiscing fondly when fighters have caught each other at the right time. Do you know what I mean? And, like, they didn't really probably have to get it on then for the British. Do you know what I mean? That's just, like, they could have easily avoided each other and went different routes. But when you look back, you think, well, fair play to them for doing that as well. And, like, they had that bit Needle, which is probably still going on now. Just there's no love lost there all between them. And then obviously he followed Groves from then, who went on to create them Froch fights and that. And I thought that was our era again. Like you say, it reminds you of those days where you watched as much. Like we still do watch a lot of boxing, but as like a younger lad, and just absorbing it all. Absorbing all the build up, the shows, ringside every week.
Boxing like for years and years before then, but it was like
the
sort of the big fights. It was as I hate using the word, but like a casual fan. Like it was, as I say, it was happening. It was Calzaghe, like a bit earlier on, like Prince Naseem, and that, you were aware of them, and like
Lennox Lewis and stuff. But we were like
exactly,
we were like 8, 9 year old.
We
were young then though. We were like
that's what I mean. You're young.
8, 9.
It wasn't a case of like, as I say, my dad wouldn't have stayed up the early hours watching those and definitely been paying for it and stuff. So it would have been a case of if it just happened to be on Sky Sports at some point, I'd have caught up with it, because like you didn't necessarily have YouTube and like instant catch up. You know what I mean? Catch up TV and like watching stuff online and that. Whereas now,
I guess
you've got no excuse really. You can watch any boxing. Well, see, not in the minute. There's not. But like, there's multiple ways to catch up on what's been going on.
No, you're right, and you think back and you think, like, a lot of them for me, like, being what are we, 32, 33, you know, you look back and you think, well, did I have a night out for that, or was I watching it with the lads? Do you know what I mean? Like, I remember exactly where I watched H. Azora, Upton Park. Do you know what I mean? I was in, it's not even called that anymore. I was in Fluid Sports Bar in Newcastle.
I was there. I was with you, sorry.
You were Fluid as well. Like, I remember where I watched that, and like, again, not great, but it's one of them fights that it got you at the house for. Do you know what I mean? And they had that build up and what have you. Like, you do remember where you were when you watched certain fights, and I think that's where I'm sort of answering these questions from. And I'm glad you sort of said Frampton Quigg as well, because again, like you said, it wasn't a fight no one will really look back on it fondly, but I think Frampton boxed hellishly that. Like, Quigg didn't really get going at all. Very strange tactics. But I'm talking about the day out as well. Like, me, you, and just one of our other mates, Paul, a good mate, just went down to Manchester and we had a cracking day. I remember we had really good seats that night as well. We were quite high up, but we were just sort of like, felt like you were sort of hanging over the ring. Do you know what I mean? Like, overlooking the ring, like, sort of perfectly in that Manchester arena. We had the front row of that section, easy access to the bar, and it just one of them nights where you just feel like you've always got a drink in your hand, and you know you're having a good crack. The bets were going on, and so he's fucking Miles Shinkman night, wasn't it?
Shout out to Miles.
Hosea Burton, Miles Shinkman on the undercard. Just a mint day and a mint night in Manchester as well. Like, a really cracking time, and what I liked about that was that sort of Belfast travelling contingent as well. It just, you know, when it just felt like the whole of Belfast were in Manchester that night, and there was, stepping outside of the like arena into the concourse and the bar and that, there was people like hugging each other and, oh God, I haven't seen you in 15 years, and oh, have you seen Johnny such and such is over there, and like, it just felt like, I don't know, it
was an occasion, wasn't it? Like, it was
proper occasion. Travelling support was unbelievable for Frampton that night, and the atmosphere, and like, I don't know, it just felt like the whole of Belfast was there with him. I can imagine Belfast must have been a bit of a ghost town that night, like a lockdown type of thing, because just Manchester was just heaving. Like, I know Quigg's a sort of Bury, Greater Manchester lad, but felt like Frampton was the home fighter that night, and Sweet Caroline and singing like Frampton during the sort of chorus and what have you. Like, it was just a midnight, and it just opened up to like what it must have been to be like from Belfast and to like follow your fighter. Do you know what I mean? Like, which I guess we've done in subsequent years with Richmond. You know what I mean? We've been all over the country and that, but like, just to have that sort of pride in one of your own is, for them, must have been such a buzz that night.
All right. So, well, moving on then seamlessly to top 3 British boxers.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I probably mentioned them all there.
I know. I was just thinking that. I was thinking out of the names we've mentioned. I think in terms of achievement,
see if you disagree with my
ability, I'd say Calzaghe, Hatton, and Lennox Lewis is like the top 3. But then, like, obviously going back a bit further, like Nazim, Prince Nazim's got to be up there. This sounds like we're going to cop out now because I'm just listing as many top boxers as you can think of. But I think, like, those 3 for me that are named first, they were the ones that like caught my imagination a bit, and I think they're going to hold a bit more sway. But then I can totally see why, like, someone might put Froch in alongside like Calzaghe or even above him based on wins and stuff. And I think
as a kid,
always put me, like, lead me to Calzaghe, like, just because of, as I say, he was like considered the man at the time, and like when I was into the sport. And
if you look at like the 90s, right, we were born 87, you 86, so we were like no more than, I don't know, 13 when the 90s ended. Do you know what I mean? So you have like a basic grasp of boxing, then you like, you get for like Lennox Lewis was another one. Like, you either occasionally got up, or you watched them the Sunday morning. Like, so I couldn't sit here and tell you everything about Nazim's career. Do you know what I mean? Like, I love him, and I you know, my dad was like, oh, watch this. It's like unlike nothing you've ever seen before. Then coming out on the magic carpet and jumping over the ropes and all that. Like, amazing. Like, I couldn't give you like a history lesson about him. And then, so that's the same with Lennox Lewis, really. Like, I appreciated them, and as kids, like, I would get up and I would watch them and stuff. Like, I loved them, and like you say, even Calzaghe was probably like, maybe he's a bit too, like, certainly when he fought Chris Eubank, it was too early. Do you know what I mean? From our point of view, we were young
Yeah,
kids
like as
then.
I say, it's a funny one because there's certain fighters like Lennox Lewis, fairly recently actually, like just sort of you end up like reading about them, and you
Oh,
like as I
amazing,
say
man.
now you can sit
Yeah.
and like you can go back and obviously I
Like,
think it takes a different level of passion for boxing to sit and watch the fights where you know the results and stuff.
I might do that one day this week.
But like with Lewis, obviously one of the things that stands out is like yes he lost, but then he avenged those losses and like,
I remember when he got lost against Ratman, and I just remember like even I was gutted then. I was like, oh, he's just young, but like he's one of them fighters that you have to look back, I guess, and then you know, I know he's not British, but the way people talk about Tyson and peak Tyson, I would like when you're talking like 88, 89, 90, when we were like 1, 2, 3,
yeah.
like I would never be able to talk about him like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, because
No, exactly, and
I wasn't there.
Like again, like when we've sort of seen him, like I remember again, this is like a bizarre memory. I remember like one Sunday being, it was in a pub and we were sat like a couple of like my dad and obviously his friends were there, and I was sat like a couple of the like younger lads, and we were playing pool and stuff. And on the telly was like Tyson and Holyfield, and I remember like watching it, and it was obviously when he bit him and that, and you were just like,
again, that's a 90s iconic
like,
moment, isn't it?
Yeah, like that's what I mean. It was like one of those iconic moments. But then I just think like that was my sort of first time actually watching Tyson like box, and
Yeah,
like, you
totally
sort of,
agree.
as you say, you hear all these tales about how good he was, and then I'm watching him getting like basically beat up by Holyfield, and I'm like, oh, is he that good? Like,
well, that's it. Yeah, I think you have to go earlier than that, don't you, for like proper peak Tyson?
oh
sort
yeah,
of like,
that's what I mean. It was years before that, so like I can't even through like a little childhood memory there, I can't like say, oh, I saw him at his peak. He's nowhere near.
I think if you ask people of our age, you would probably say Hatton was the one where people fell in love with. Do you know what I mean? That like, I don't know, watching him on Sky Sports like fight nights and Friday night fight nights and Thursday nights and whatever, like coming up to that, like again, we were younger, but we had more of a like a. I always remember him being on ringside once, and he was eating his full English and just random things like that. And he had this mountain of food, and he was in training and stuff. And I just thought, wow, who is this like kid? And obviously, you know, we know a lot more about Hatton than we would say even Calzaghe. Do you know what I mean? Or maybe he's even like or Lewis or whatever. But like Hatton, I would say people would probably say Hatton, Calzaghe, Lewis, Nazim, them type of eras, right? Like that is where a lot of people, that was where your understanding of boxing came from, those fighters, definitely. But I think if you fast forward to our eras, like, and I'm talking as we were like sort of teenagers / 20s, then I would have to probably go, and this is just on pure enjoying their style of boxing. They seem sound blokes, and I just like the way they sort of handle themselves. Do you know what I mean? I would say probably Frampton, Groves, and I would probably, just for the most recent story and the way it's all gone on and stuff, probably I'd have to say Tyson Fury as the three of my like adolescence / adult years. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I'd agree with that. Like, I think that's like if we're saying like there was a sort of tide turning around like Froch retiring.
Yeah, Froch,
I think Froch you'd have to chuck in there as well. I'd say Froch, Frampton, and I'd agree with like Fury as well. I suppose like two probably the most significant wins.
Groves was one of them for me. I just thought,
like, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love George Groves. I wanted him to be both times, but I think in terms of achievements and like when you were saying that sort of gauntlet that Froch went up run and
amazing, yeah.
I think he's got to be held in
he does
slightly higher esteem than Grove, but
yeah, 100% achievement wise.
Personal preference, I'd probably would go with Grove.
Yeah.
But like,
I just love the way Groves box. I loved his jab. I don't know, it was just sort of blind loyalty in the end. And, you know, like, I just liked him. I liked the way, I liked his patter. I liked the way he handled himself. And, like, I don't know, I just, Frampton, like, again, like, was probably cemented that night in Manchester where I just, you know, he's class. And then obviously he went over stateside and the Santa Cruz fights and all that. And, like, he's still going. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's obviously probably not the peak of his powers anymore, and he probably hasn't got too long left, but he just seems like a proper sound lad. You know what I mean? Like, just dead canny. So again, that's in Tyson Fury, like another one. I remember exactly where I was when he beat Klitschko. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was Were you there? London?
Yeah, I was. I were there.
You were there. With Newcastle to play Crystal Palace, and we watched it in the bar in Shoreditch, and it was like, again, like absolutely loads were down there for the match and all watching the fights, and and you've got to look back to that. And not many people give him a chance. Do you know what I mean? Like, Klitschko cost me a bit of money that night.
I don't think we did. Like, obviously, everyone speaking there, it was like almost a case of which round Klitschko going to end this in. Like,
I know I was.
Is he going to stop him, or is he just going to win wide on points? It was like that sort of thing.
That was just that era. It just looked like another sort of fight of that Klitschko sort of jab and grab type of era, and he would, had few. Hadn't really seen much of Fury at that point. Like,
I remember, I'd seen a few fights on Channel 5 and that, and like I remember he'd obviously been dropped a couple of times, like before.
Yes,
Steve Cunningham and that. If you can get clipped at that lower level, like Klitschko can surely catch him, and it was just that total passing of the torch, wasn't it? It was like Fury absolutely schooled him.
It's phenomenal, eh? And then obviously
Wilder performances, like I know he obviously got the draw in one of them, but then like the way he finished him off, I think you're right. I think he's got to be up there in that discussion now.
I think you'd have to give a honorary shout out to Vitson as well. From a Northeast point of view.
I was wondering if you were going to mention him,
well, yeah, of course. Just that that sort of, I guess it correlates with that sort of British boxing blog journey. Do you know what I mean? So like,
I think that's the thing. I think now as well, like there are others that we've probably been asked this now because like we've said like that generation we were talking about almost like coming to the end. Frampton's coming to the end. Groves retired. Froch is retired. Like Bellew now.
Bellew's gone. You've got Brook hanging on in there, and you've got
Brook and Khan
I guess
aren't much longer. But then like that sort of.
Oh, you know what?
Next ones, I'd say like Josh Taylor's the one who.
Oh yeah, ask us in 10 years, and you know what I mean.
Yeah, he's going to be up there in the discussion as well.
I feel bad that we never gave a shout at Amir Khan at this point as well. That's like we haven't even mentioned him once, and I think if you're talking British fighters who've achieved a lot, like Christ.
To be fair, he was one I was thinking of like for the British fights, and I was like, again, he hasn't.
No, he hasn't.
The way his career went, and you can't knock him for it. Like in the similar to Hatton and that, like he went off stateside to get the big fights rather than the big domestic fights, and I think
he did.
Again, like see, like now I'm thinking, would you put him? Like you definitely chuck him in as well. Like depending on which sort of era. Like we're not boxing historians. We're not ones who can go back decades and sort of put Khan against the best fighters from the 70s or the 80s or whatever. But I think he's done as much for British boxing as anyone. Any of the ones.
Yeah, I totally agree. And again, our era, like you remember, people of our age, or remember him like on ITV. Do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like the Prescott fight, for Christ, not a great example, but you know what I mean? Like he came through on ITV and was fighting on terrestrial and stuff, and was an Olympian, and then obviously he went off to the States and had some ups and downs, and he still does have some ups and downs. Like but again, he's one of them fighters that you never get. It's always sort of you watch him through your hands. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely. But again,
but he's still a hell of a fighter.
It's like again, obviously with Khan, he's got his flaws and that, but like
he's still been a
biggest things in boxing because it's almost like in between the losses. But like his run at 140 when he I think he fought maybe lightweight a couple more fights after Prescott, and then he went up and beat Kotelnik. And from like that Kotelnik, that run when he went to America and like beat Maidana, like Malignaggi, Judah, like
unbelievable
top names at the time. Like he was.
It will probably take.
He could have been easily considered the best like super welterweight as it is. Super lightweight as it is now. Like
it'll probably
time and like he unified the belts and stuff, and like he was like a big name. He was prime, and I think because maybe that's happened so young, like early sort of mid-20s, then there's been that time afterwards where you're sort of seeing the decline a bit more, and like to some generations of fans, it'll only be like the Crawford fight and like his most recent the Canelo loss and stuff that
Canelo,
we're going for, and it's not necessarily the most fair way of looking at it.
It'll probably take for Khan to retire and a few years to pass when you can sort of look back and like reanalyze like you've just done there. Do you know what I mean? For people to realise like how good he was and how much good he like did for British boxing and flying the flag for British. You know what I mean? It'll probably, I guess you can't really do it at this point because he's still fighting. You know what I mean? But like you said, that run there that he had at 140 and those names, and he's fought everyone. And all right, hasn't always gone to plan, but he's give it as good as he got. Do you know what I mean? And so he would get an honorary shout out as well. Good question, that, like, enjoyed
That
it.
was. He's also said top 3 trainers, which he said Adidas, Nike, and Puma don't count.
Tricky one, that, isn't it? Top 3 trainers.
This is one, and I'm going to explain my answer before I give it, because I think that there's probably countless boxing trainers out there that are equally as capable but haven't got the recognition, and that's definitely coming through from us having sort of ties with a lot of the ones in our area. So there'll be ones like the sort of Northeast equivalent. If you look at the likes of Davy Binns, Mal Gates, obviously Neil Fannin, the one at the moment with the British champions, like these trainers that have got regional fighters up to that domestic level, so getting a British title or getting a Commonwealth title, there'll be ones like that in pockets all up and down the UK, like from obviously Scotland, like Northwest, whatever, like Liverpool on its own, Manchester, obviously down in London. There'll be ones
absolutely,
I haven't even heard of that are unheralded, and like I can't really obviously then include them in the sort of discussion. So if you're looking at saying the best trainers are the ones that are working with the best fighters, that's going to be a totally different answer to who's potentially is the best trainer.
I know you're totally right. You are right, and you pick your favourites at this point rather than picking who you think is the better. Like I would pick people who I think have achieved things as well, but also who come across well and who I like listening to, and who I would, if they were on a podcast or doing an interview, I'd listen to, or I would want to interview. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's a tricky one. Like I always like listening to Peter Fury. Do you know what I mean? And I think he sort of Peter Fury gets a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? A bit like Photoshop out of the Tyson story these days. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, like forget the job he did with Tyson. Like it was incredible, really. Talking about that fight in Dusseldorf earlier, the Klitschko fight, like that was his mastermind, really. Like obviously it was Uncle Huey before Peter, but then Peter picked up the reins and he did an incredible job with Tyson, and that was like the building blocks of what you see now. Do you know what I mean? And like whatever's gone on there has gone on. And you watched that ITV documentary recently, or you read his autobiography, and it doesn't get that much of a mention anymore. Like he does give him credit, and he basically says they fell out, and then that was it. So, but I just think I like the way he talks, I like the way he comes across, and again that job he did with Tyson, I think was incredible, really. So I think he's quite underrated. I really like Shane McGuigan, and I like whatever goes on with the McGuigans and Cyclone, I don't know. But as a trainer and as someone like we've met before, I don't know. I like him. I like his calmness and the way he carries himself, and he sort of just broke out. When your dad's as famous as his dad is, to then stand on your own 2 feet and train some really top level world class fighters, but get their respect. You know what I mean? And not just be Barry's son Shane who does the pads or whatever. Like you don't train sort of Frampton, Groves, Hay, Taylor, Luke Campbell without knowing what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? Like I think I really do like Shane McGuigan as well. So that's 2 there.
I definitely agree with you on Shane, because he was the one who came to my mind, and I think with him, you look at the boxers who sort of left him, and has anyone left him and gone on and done better?
No, that's a good point. That's a fair point.
Obviously, it's to do with age and stuff as well. Like Frampton's coming to the end of his career, but I don't think he particularly has looked any better than or made any improvements since leaving Shane McGuigan. You could say the same of again David Hay, absolute state when he left Shane after the first Bellew fight, he was never in a position to look better. But from that point of view, you think, right, well, Shane's obviously doing something right. He's putting the building blocks in place. He's creating these fighters. He's getting them to a very high level. And with that in mind, it'll be interesting to see what Josh Taylor does now that obviously they've parted ways as well.
Yeah.
Like the Campbell.
Has he gone with Ben Davison? He has, hasn't he, Josh Taylor?
Yeah. That's really interesting to see how he does with him. And
100%. No.
Like
another one,
how well he performed under Shane McGuigan at various levels and including world level, he looked sensational. Like, then Luke Campbell's done the same. He's looked like he's made improvements and looked as good as he sort of had.
You're right. You made a good point before about like them sort of there'll be trainers up and down the country that you don't like, who will not, like we know our people, like you said, here in the northeast, and there'll be carbon copies of them up and down the land, and when their fighters do get success, then you're buzzing for them. Do you know what I mean? Like an example of that was like, say, Steffi Bull the other week on that Matchroom Sheffield show. Like, his fighter Terry Harper won a world title, and his other fighter on the bill, Tomlinson, won, I think, was at the Commonwealth or something like that. And it was just like, that night's probably meant absolutely everything to him. Do you know what I mean? Like, that would be like when, say, Glenn Foote won the Commonwealth up in Scotland against Jason Easton, and like that must have meant the world to Dave Binns. Do you know what I mean? Stuff like that. Or like when like Lewis won the British title.
Definitely.
Like when Lewis won the British title before he went with Fano full time, and that was like for his dad, and who'd, from the age of 6 or whatever, through to being an amateur, and like Forest Hall and all that, through the British title. That's like, them achievements must be in the world for sort of regionalized region trainers. Do you know what I mean? Local trainers.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, obviously, like you sort of were talking about before with Shane. Like, obviously, he's trained Carl Frampton like all the way up. He's done the same with Josh Taylor, but not every trainer gets to have like these elite amateurs turn over with them.
No, absolutely not.
They don't have that drawing power, or like they're not in the right region. They're not in the right gym. They're not in with the right promoter or whatever it may be. So it's like that, like the football comparison, isn't it? Like, Guardiola's first job was at Barca and stuff, and he's all the top clubs, and he's won the Champions League. He's won trophies everywhere he's been. But stick him in the conference, would he be able to get a conference team up to League Two or whatever? It's that sort of different element to it.
Right.
1-2 are in with the world title fights, and if you're a trainer and you can sit down and say, well, I've trained this world champion, I've trained this world champion, got this lad to a European title, like I've trained this Olympian, got him, like obviously McGuigan's got a Coley now, like these are the caliber of fighters I've worked with. As a boxer, you must be like, well, actually, I want to get to that level, I want to train with him.
It is a good point, like, and you obviously the bigger reputation you get, the more scrutiny you're under. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a very interesting one.
Like why, like for example, like one of the Northeast stars, Josh Kelly, like come out of the Olympics, and
shit, I mentioned that at Booth. Aye.
Well, yeah, this is what I'm thinking of, because obviously, despite the fact that we've got perfectly like good trainers, very experienced trainers in the region, I think it was Dad or like what Josh himself, when they turned over, had like reached out and contacted Adam Booth and said, like, you're the trainer I want. And again, like, that'll be through seeing his work with Hay, with Groves at the time, like what he was doing with those boxers. And obviously, like, thing, right? Like, my style fits well with Adam Booth. I'm going to go down to London. He's worked with world champions. That's the level I want to get to.
Huge Adam Booth fan, by the way. I forgot to mention him, and I just like the way he talks, the way his fighters fight. Like, and you look back and you think, God, if Groves had stayed with him, but it would be different for Groves. Like, I don't know, I like Adam Booth. Like, I like talking to him. I like the way he calls a fight. I like the way he sees fights. I like the way his fighters go about the business. So he would be on my list as well as top 3 as well, I think. Definitely.
There we go. We'll leave that that one there.
But like you say, there's loads. Like, you could bang on about the northeast ones up here, like like Dave Binns and that. I always call him like the Bobby Robson of trainers. Do you know what I mean? Because he's the type of bloke that his stories go on for like ages. But he's the type of bloke you'd want to run through a brick wall for. Do you know what I mean? Like, he like that loyalty he has with his lads, and they absolutely love him and stuff like that. That's another one. Fano, quiet man, but like really dry sense of humour, but like pretty good trainer. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and again, it's these ones that are proven. Like, it's obviously working with what you've got as well. And I'm not saying that like disrespectfully. I'm just saying that, like, we'll talk about this for again, like however many times. Like, not every boxer is going to be, and I don't want to use the word capable, because I think from a boxing point of view, there's a few could have been capable of getting to a higher level. But the boxer is going to win a British title for whatever reason, or they're not going to have the backing to get to European or world level. So, like, from a trainer's point of view, to sort of go against the odds a bit and go against the grain and get someone like Glenn Foote to winning a Commonwealth title, boxing for a British title, it's a hell of an achievement.
And I think as the years go by, you're probably controversial here, but the more I feel like I sort of warm to Joe Gallagher a bit. Don't laugh, because like there was a point where I guess it was that sort of peak Sky years where we mentioned earlier, where Ringside was on, and he sort of became a bit of a character himself. Do you know what I mean? A bit of a parody, and everyone had an opinion on Joe Gallagher. He was either people liked him or oh he's shit, or like oh he's up his own arse and he speaks too much and all this, and like. But then as the years go by, and he seems to have mellowed a bit, or maybe I just don't listen to him as much. But like when you look back at that sort of, he was one of them trainers that, you know, based out of Manchester, and like, but had some good fighters. Don't get me wrong, but then there was that golden period, I guess, for him where everything was just going right. Do you know what I mean? He had British champions, world champions, and when you look back and like what he did with Crawler, for example, was incredible. Like Liam Smith, he had the Smiths, the Callum Smith, like Quigg when he was sort of up and coming, you know, before he went to America and that, and like to have that sort of stable when you look back now and you think, bloody hell, he was doing all right for himself then. And like he still has got some good fighters, but obviously Callum Smith being the main example. I just mean like to look back and think he had a good run there, right? Whether you like him or you don't, like either. His records and his belts that his fighters have won under him will probably stand up to anyone. You know what I mean?
This is it. It's that like equivalent of the look at me trophy cabinet, isn't it? Like look at the belts.
Yeah.
If you're a boxer and you go to Joe Gallagher and like say like to sort of paraphrase Lewis Ritson the other week when he was on like saying, right, I'm a boxer. I'm turning pro. These are my goals. What can you do? Like what have you done in the game that's going to help me get there? And he can turn around and say, well, like. This amount of world champions, this amount of like British champions,
this amount of European champions, Commonwealth, like Callum Johnson, I forgot that. Like,
like you've obviously the four Smith brothers all won a British, Crawler won a British, Cardle, Hosea Burton won a British, Callum Johnson. You've just said there. It's like every boxer he had in his stable for a period got to at least British level, and
it's incredible, that, isn't it?
Like I think there's definitely an element of. They might, because of them working like closely with Matchroom, they've maybe got opportunities.
Yeah, 100%.
You still got to train them and get them into the position to take those opportunities, which like they've all done. And then, as I say, like, many of them went on to world level as well, got like world titles. It's if you're a boxing trainer and you start a gym or whatever, and you get to that level, you're going to be happy with your lot, surely.
Oh, absolutely. And like you say, when he looks back in a few years, he'd probably be immensely proud of that run that he went on. But it was a good question, that, from Mr. Walker. Like,
nice.
Any others?
Make you up your game. There's one from a certain Ricky Orr.
I've seen that one.
What would you rather catch? Your dad shagging the dog, or the dog shagging your dad?
I replied, I think it has to be the dog shagging your dad.
To be fair, like
because at least that's the dog getting carried away.
There's probably been a time where the dog's humped my dad's leg anyway, so I've probably.
Well, that's it. It has to be the dog. Any other alternatives just not worth thinking about, is it? So
it's a different conversation you'd have with the dog for doing it as you would your dad for doing it.
Trust our mate to quote a sensible question, eh?
I think that's a lot.
I think it is.
Questions anyway. Was there any more you can? Oh, this one's just come through actually.
Go on.
When we're recording, says from Bryson on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think promoters will drop the pay-per-view charge? If not, will that mean we will end up one or even two pay-per-view shows a month to make sure the fights happen this year? So, like, obviously we've talked about that with.
No, I definitely don't think they'll drop it.
I don't, because I think they're in a position now where people, if there was ever a point where people are willing to pay,
it's going to be starved of sport,
or even twice a month, to see some live boxing, they're going to be doing. I know what I'm like. I'll be saturated with it, but I won't care.
That's it. It's when people are being starved of sport for ages. I think there could be a merging of shows, 100%. Like, you might have to merge things together to get all these things done. Like, I know Kelly Evanesian wasn't a pay-per-view, but if that fight's still going to go ahead, that'll have to be merged onto another show.
Originally it was, though, wasn't it? It was meant to be support, and then was it the Dillian White one or the Chisora Usyk?
Yeah, that's it.
It was going to be a chief support for one of them, so like that one I think could be quite easily moved, and it might be that it depends. It's that massive if and when it gets up and running again. There could just be like three big shows on between now and the end of the year.
Well, that's it. It all depends, doesn't it? It depends what the priority is, who the priority to get out and fight
And
is.
all
Like
the factors we talked about, like will the boxes be ready? Will anything actually be up and running at the end of this year? We don't know, to be honest.
Like, could you put White, Povetkin, and Chisora Usyk on the same bill and just charge a premium there? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, I've got no idea how Frank Warren will do it with Dubois Joyce. Like, is that gonna still go ahead, like you said, or I've got
Even
no
like
idea.
The other sort of Sky dates, like obviously Ritz and Vasquez, and that does that then get shoved down London on an undercard somewhere?
I seen Hearn yesterday said Newcastle will see you soon and all that, and at this point it's meant to be June the 27th. But I was just about to say that myself. Will that get moved? Will that get bodged onto another show? And like they can't fit all the shows in. Just like this year may have to be condensed a bit. Do you know what I mean? So will they drop the charge? Absolutely not. Like if they drop the charge, I'd be amazed. You're talking about an audience who have been starved of sport for possibly 3, 4, 5 months by the time these fights come around. Maybe it's more. I don't know. So no, I think they'll absolutely not. They might. I think didn't they announce something that they would give a certain amount of tickets to the NHS for every show for the rest of the year, however many. So that sort of tick that box. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think they'll like give any pay-per-view discounts or any sort of profits away. And out like that, no, absolutely not. Like when these companies haven't had no, money coming in from fight nights or what have you, then no, I think the pay-per-view charge would be the last thing to drop.
Well,
cynical, but I just can't say it. I think like people are, like you said, starved and like people want live sport. They want something to watch and something to bet on. And well, I know
that's supply and demand, isn't it? Obviously, the supply's been cut off, so the demand's just increasing. And when it is eventually up and running, you can almost guarantee that the first decent show is going to be pay-per-view.
Hey, it would be amazing if they did, and they used this period to reflect on pay-per-views and blah blah blah. But I think that's living in an ideal world. But no, I can't say it. I can't say it. No. Like,
should we wrap that up there then? Is that enough therapy for you?
Right, aye, good to talk, isn't it?
Kills
an hour and a bit. But
no, we'll do another one next week. Even if we don't actually put it out, we'll just come on and chat again.
No, just record it. 2 idiots. No structure, and just do it. But no, thanks to everyone for the questions, and thanks to everyone that listens. And hope, obviously, goes without saying that we both hope everyone's safe and well, and everyone's families are safe and well, and you're staying in and being sensible, and everyone's just taking good care of themselves and. I say enjoying this lockdown, but coping in this lockdown as much as you can. So I take care, everyone. We'll speak to you soon.
Stay home, stay safe.
Yes, from both of us. Stay home, stay safe. Goodbye. Thank you.
Yes.
Cheers, Bye. Bye.